Donald Trump actually make the point that no, the relationship is going nowhere, and that he's a friend of Prime Minister Modi's. And then you see the Prime Minister reciprocate. So sequentially, I find that to be quite interesting. In all of this, there's a statement from Manish Tiwari which is quite interesting, and I wanted Akhilesh to actually reflect on this, because I do believe that this summarizes India's sensitivities. I'm reading it out. What Donald Trump and the likes of Pete Navarro don't quite get is that it's not about tariffs, it's about self-respect, dignity, and honor. We fought the Imperial British, vanquished them. India will eat one roti less, but never succumb to strong arming. Trump says India and Russia appear lost to deepest, darkest China. It is, that is what this is about, Akhilesh. The prism through which we are seeing this in India and we are reporting this in India is not the way the US administration is seeing it. They keep talking about getting that deal done, the best possible deal, stop importing oil. At some stage, for us here in India, it moved away from oil and tariffs to the fact that we were being insulted.
This is the question, Vishnu. We do not know what is it all about. They are saying it's only about deal, but is it about the Nobel Prize? Is it about the India-Pakistan so-called peace deal, the ceasefire between India and Pakistan? Or is it about hosting Pakistan army chief at America's land, and where he is issuing a threat of a nuclear war to India from the soil of the US? So does it make any sense? And now everybody has this question in mind, whether the tariff will be rolled back or not. Everybody has this in mind, but we do not know the answer, because we do not know whether Mr. Trump will be rolling back the tariff, 50% tariff or not. And that is why India is not taking any chances. India is not hoping against the hope. India is saying that, yes, we are ready. And we are preparing ourselves to give relief to our exporters, especially those who are in the sectors of like textile and apparels, jewels and jewelry. And yesterday we reported also, later Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman confirmed our story that the government of India is actually considering rolling out a package, a kind of a stimulus package to the export sector to give them relief, a similar one which was given to various sectors during the COVID pandemic. So Indian government is not taking any chances. They are not saying that they are hopeful that Mr. Trump will be rolling back this 50% unnecessary and illegal tariff. But actually, India is considering how to give relief to the exporters.
Akhilesh, give me a second. I just wanted to take that same question across to Gauri. Gauri, how in the last several days is this less about sanctions and more about the fact that New Delhi feels insulted?
It's totally about that, Vishnu. This business of talking down is something that nobody in India was willing to take it. It was not about oil. It was not about the trade deal. It was this thing about how member after member of the Trump administration was talking down to Indians. And I think that is the reason why entire public sentiment has so quickly turned against America, so quickly turned against Donald Trump. And that's exactly what Manish Tiwari is pointing out here, rising above the party politics, where he makes a point which resonates with every Indian, which is that we will eat one roti less, but we will not allow anybody to come and lecture us, tell us how we should conduct our business, how we should negotiate in the world, and who will tell us how we will run our business is nobody's way of dealing with India. And I think that is the largest sentiment. And I think that is what Manish Tiwari is saying here, echoing something above party politics. There's been a lot of politics around this as well. Congress party has taken down the government on the specific issue of the India-US relationship. And the point that Manish Tiwari is making, he was also one of those members who went out, spoke about India after Operation Sindoor. So he really understands India's position on several of these issues. And the point that he made, we are happy eating one meal less, but we will not let anybody lecture us. And I think that is the bottom line. And that is what Trump administration and members of his government like Peter Navarro will now have to work towards building it, which is the trust deficit. How do you go about addressing the trust deficit with a country which was your partner in several areas? And now you've gone ahead and lectured them, added racist slurs. Every day there's a new comment that came in, added many layers of insults to it, even as there was no response that came in from India, which was undiplomatic. We did not reply in the same coin. We were measured, we were very diplomatic, and we were responsible. in the wake of this comment from Manish Tiwari is extremely important and should be seen like that.
I agree. Professor, I just wanted to ask you, Sierra Claire, I just wanted to ask you, do you believe that there are those in the Trump administration who fail to understand or have failed to understand that making casteist slurs against India to the effect that Brahmins are benefiting from the import of Russian oil is not a statement about business? It's not a statement about sanctions or the economy or a trade deal. It strikes at the core of what insults people in India. Is there a lack of understanding from the people or by the people who make these remarks?
Well, I think that it's not necessarily important what I think or what other people think about the people in the Trump administration who make comments, because the Trump administration is a very top-down administration, a lot of, and more so than many past administrations. It's really, and it's something he learned in his first term, and that's why it is that way, because he knew that he had to have people who were going to follow his direction and who were going to be committed to his policies, because he had so much internal headwind in his last administration. So this is, whatever other people say, if they may say it and they may believe it, I don't know. But what is important is what Trump says and what Trump does, because he is ultimately the decision maker. And there's nobody that is going to have the power to come along and do something that he doesn't want to do.
Gargi, let me go across to you. Any questions which you may have for any of us?
Said by the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick just yesterday. We're seeing these friendly remarks coming from Donald Trump. It was in response to a question from ANI during that briefing, the Prime Minister reacting to that. But yesterday, you had these very, firm comments coming, not from a White House advisor, from the U.S. Commerce Secretary, where he says conditions for the Indian, for India as abandon Russian oil, support America, stand by the dollar, walk away from BRICS, and these are the conditions, he said, and he said, I'm sure India will be back to the table.
No, yeah. It's not, as I point earlier,
right. I think we're having a bit of a problem there with your audio vision. Let me take that to Gauri. Gauri, what do we make of that? The fact that the Commerce Secretary is laying down these conditions just a few hours ago. Donald Trump, of course, talking about his friendship with Modi, but it clearly there's a lot of work still to be done. It's not some huge turnaround just yet.
Gargi, it just means that there is going to be more uncertainty ahead. We may, of course, the president has come out with a very important message indicating that the relationship he wants to build from here on. But let's not forget the uncertainty that is now built into the Trump administration. At many layers, there are now conflicting messages that keep coming in, and that has really contributed to the present flux. Even now, there is no clear directive or a message that has come in from the Trump administration as to the roadmap ahead from building it. If you want to talk about the trade aspect of it itself, how will negotiations take place? How soon will that happen? Will it now be specifically on some areas where there can be some breakthrough? Will there be a limited deal that will be on the table? All those are aspects that really take the messaging forward, which is that let's rebuild, let's focus on what all we can accomplish, and let's try and then address the areas where we have a conflict of opinion in a civilized, diplomatic manner. I think that message is something still India is awaiting from. There's a directive that's coming from the president, but as we've been talking, top-down approach now requires the president to then go ahead and indicate the same to his key members of the administration.
That's right, and let me go across to Aditya now. Some of the reasons why it's so confounding, this strain in the U.S.-India relations has been that there's so much behind the scenes, so much sentiment, about Donald Trump wanting the Nobel Peace Prize, about of India not giving them that satisfaction of having played a major role in arriving at peace during Operation Sindoor. So there's a lot of other factors that seem to be in play here, which is why it's so confounding for India to deal with this. And we know we've talked about the unfairness of these tariffs on India at a time when with China which imports Russian oil is not being punished by the same sanctions.
Well, Gargi, the Donald Trump administration may like to believe and may like the people to believe that the main reason is the Russian oil issue. And that's what, is the main narrative that's coming in from DC. But the reality of the matter is that this started much before. During the ceasefire of the India-Pakistan conflict as well, the 4-day war, how Americans went door to door talking about how it was Trump who brought in that ceasefire. And India was very much clear that yes, US did play a role, but was not a third party, was not involved in the entire ceasefire process, because India had said that if Pakistan requests for one, we will consider. And that's what happened. Pakistan almost begged India for a ceasefire after they got a drubbing during Operation Sindoor. And finally, the history is out there. Apart from that, when the G7 happened in Canada, immediately after that, Modi and Trump had to meet. That did not happen, and they had a 35 minutes long phone call. In that phone call, apparently, the Trump might have suggested that there should be a photo op between Asim Munir, Modi, and Trump at the White House. India was very firm that this cannot happen because there is no US role, and Modi will certainly not get clicked with Asim Munir when Pakistani terrorism really continues. And since that time, there's been this kind of an angry, raging Trump going against New Delhi, not just imposing 25% tariffs and then additional penalties of 25%, but giving a free hand to attack talks from the Trump administration to go against India, to go against the Modi government, but also go against the people of India with attack on Brahmins of India, saying that Brahmins are profiteering, and then saying that India is acting as a laundromat for Kremlin. And then, of course, when the SCO summit happened, Gagi, that's when perhaps the alarm bells rose all across in DC that India was inching closer to Russia and China. That huddle between the leaders, Modi, Putin, and Xi Jinping, friendly banter, smiles, sent a very strong message that there is a geopolitical shift that is happening, and India has not retaliated. India will not engage in a slugfest, but India will certainly consider other options that are on the table. So
Right.
that led to a lot of questions being asked in DC at the White House. And I believe firmly, last point here, that yesterday sometime, Marco Rubio and others might have met Trump and tried to tell him that we are losing India and Russia to China. And we know Trump, that he is almost transparent and he puts out all these things on Twitter, on social media. So he tweeted, he put it on Truth Social that we are losing India and Russia. And within hours, he shifted his goalpost again. He shifted his stance and said that no, nothing is wrong, nothing to
Right.
worry about. Modi is a friend and everything will be okay. So now we have a welcome message from Prime Minister Modi. Icebreaker that has happened. But will this result in a trade deal? Will this result in the restoration of the strategic bilateral partnership? Time will tell.
Right, Aditya, thanks so much for that. We're also joined by Ms. Veena Sikri, former diplomat. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. What do you make of these recent developments? Donald Trump in that interview saying a very special relationship with India, how Prime Minister Modi would always be friends, the Prime Minister's response to that?
Well, I must say that, yes, the tweet by President Trump yesterday was very disappointing.
Yes.
But I think the main aspect of that tweet we have to see is that President Trump possibly has been misunderstanding India's philosophy and foreign policy based on strategic autonomy. The thing is that when we have a talk or a discussion with President Xi Jinping or with President Putin or we are at the SCO summit, it does not mean that we are in any way trying to affect or adversely impact our relationship with USA. With USA, we have always had a very traditional, excellent global strategic partnership, and we are committed to that. As you do know, even despite all the tweets from President Trump and some of his colleagues, the meetings have been going on. The IMEC meeting has been going on. The defense cooperation has been going on. Military exercises, joint military exercises have been held in Alaska, and so on. So I think that today morning's tweet from President Trump shows a much greater appreciation of India's strategic autonomy policy. And he says, no, I don't think we have lost Prime Minister Modi. And he said, I have a great friendship and admiration for Prime Minister Modi. So that is fine. It's a very good recognition, a kind of, stepping back from what he had said yesterday. And I think our Prime Minister has immediately accepted, and our Prime Minister also appreciates his friendship with President Trump. And he has tweeted of that, and he said that he wants to continue with that friendship. So I think this is a very good reconciliation or coming back to the traditional path of Indo-US strategic global partnership and very comprehensive strategic global partnership. And I think that from now on, I hope that the understanding will come back much more on track, and
So, but
each side will
Ambassador Sikri,
understand.
Vishnu here, that's my question to you, ma'am. Do you believe what Trump says is something that will hold true by this evening or tomorrow morning? Or are we going to bring you back and then
Well,
say that
I
latest
do
setback in
agree that
Indo-US ties?
yeah, that's right. I do agree with President Trump that unpredictability seems to be the only predictability that you can talk about. I agree on that. But still, I do think that after yesterday's tweet by President Trump, there has been some kind of a rethinking. You know, using the words he used, we have lost India, etc. I think that everybody else in the USA would have explained to him, whether Secretary of State Marco Rubio and many others. And of course, there's been the continuous comments in the American media by people, the National Security Advisor of the Biden administration and many others, many other individuals, many other commentators, and so on. So I do think that this has, President Trump has been able to appreciate this. And basically, he's understood the concept of India's strategic autonomy. That's what I hope, that it has been explained to him, that it doesn't mean that if President Xi Jinping and President Putin and Prime Minister Modi are seen in the same frame at the SCO summit, it doesn't mean a change in India's foreign policy. We still value our relationship with the USA, and Prime Minister Modi has said that. And we still want to continue with that positive appreciation, and we want to carry it forward. And we do know there are a whole lot of channels on which the relationship is continuing. Even 2 days ago, I think that the first civilian nuclear technology deal was announced, and so on. So I think there are a lot of aspects and groups and industries in America who remain fully engaged with India, and that's what they want it to be. They don't want to stop that.
So, Sikri, just give me half a second. I do believe it's important also at this stage for us to take a look at what the Minister Piyush Goyal told me day before yesterday. You know, I pointedly asked him about the state of the trade relationship between India and America, whether it had broken down. Remember, there was an American trade delegation which was expected to come to India. That hasn't happened. And therefore, this response from the man at the center of trade negotiations with America was important. Let's just listen in to that key part of this interview.
Where is the situation with talks on America and trade? And I will not belabor this point because I think GST is the focus.
Talks never happen with the media. But I can tell you the US-India relationship is very consequential. It's a very strong and powerful friendship. We have been allies for far too long. We've had blips. We had the sanctions post the nuclear tests in '98. We overcame that. And I'm very sure that this relationship is very sustaining and long-term and will continue to grow.
And there is no compromise on our autonomy, which in this case is linked to the import of Russian oil.
I think 140 crore Indians know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi stands tall and strong to protect national sovereignty and national interests.
From an economic standpoint, there is a great deal of hypocrisy in what's happening, not just about America, but if you look at Europe. A lot of our refined oil products are going to Europe. They're going to other parts of the world. And yet, China imports more Russian oil than us. And yet, it's India which is being targeted in this manner.
The foreign minister...
Make your job tougher. I mean, I know what the foreign ministry has said. I can narrate to you the words that they have said.
Foreign ministry is...
a huge aspect of our economy.
The foreign minister and the ministry has very categorically brought the facts on the table. And I'm sure once the facts are appreciated, it will have its own resonance on the trade talks also.
Ambassador Sikri, I was just listening to what the minister told me day before yesterday, and to use these were his words in describing the relationship with America. Strong and powerful. It's a strong and powerful relationship. It's a sustaining relationship. It's a long-term relationship, and it is a very consequential relationship. Do you believe that New Delhi, I beg your pardon, Washington, may have picked up on some of the cues from the man at the center of trade negotiations between Delhi and Washington, and at some level maybe conveyed that to Trump, who has now sort of come around with this peaceful gesture, overture?
Yes, Vishnu, I think you're right on that, because we do know that the trade deal being negotiated between India and the USA, the BTA, this is at many times been so close to completion that the USTR has even taken it to President Trump for his approval. But we do know that on one or two occasions, specifically, President Trump turned it down and said, no, he wants more. Now, let us hope that now the negotiations are continuing. Maybe there have been some further adjustments at the margin. Maybe President Trump will be ready to finalize and approve the BTA that has been under negotiation between India and the USA. I do hope so. I do hope that happens, and this will be setting a great thing right. The second thing that you had asked about is the purchase of Russian oil. I do agree with you that we are fully within our rights to do that. And what is definitely very significant, that China, Turkey, Europe, all of them are doing far more purchases from Russia on this. And America themselves have a bilateral trade with Russia, which I believe is running into $5 or $6 billion a year. So, vanadium, palladium, fertilizers, and so on. So I do hope that on these issues, discussions can continue. I think discussions should be held directly between delegations. Everything should be ironed out and not done maybe public media negotiation. Media negotiations through the media always cause further misunderstandings. So I think one has to agree that President Trump, I think in his tweet today, has been very specific on recalling our bilateral partnership, and we also have recalled it, and that's a very good thing. Let's take it from here one by one issue at a time, and hope that this strengthening of the relationship continues. I think it's a very good moment.
On this momentum. That it's not enough to just leave it, as Ambassador Sikri seems to suggest, that the remarks made by Trump and Modi, that things need to move really fast. Do you believe that there needs to be, and I'm asking for your opinion, Aditya, there needs to be a rethink on the Prime Minister's plans of not going to the UN General Assembly session, that perhaps he should go, and perhaps that would be a great opportunity to more decidedly sort of sort things out?
Well, that can always happen, Vishnu. In diplomacy, things change. So we could always see that if a trade deal is arrived at, Prime Minister could change his, stance once again. If you remember, Vishnu, a couple of weeks ago when the first provisional list came in from the UNGA, it was the name of the Prime Minister. It was the head of the state, the head of the government who was to attend from India. And this morning, early morning, when the new provisional list came in, it said minister, which means that External Affairs Minister Jaishankar would be there. But if in the next few days, and it does seem likely that there would be some headway perhaps in the trade negotiations, they would want the top leaders of both countries to announce it together. And what better a platform than the White House? Apart from the UNG on the sidelines, there could be a bilateral once again, and it would be a big announcement from the narrative and the messaging point out from Trump as well, because he hasn't really had big wins. In the recent times, he has come on the big promise this time around to have peace in Russia, Ukraine, peace in Israel, Hamas, and on the renewed ties with several countries and America First policy. But on the India front, there's only been an approach which hasn't really gone down well with New Delhi, and also the foreign policy wonks from India, from Europe, and all across, saying that this is not the kind of approach you have with India. This is not pragmatic. And there seems to be now recalibration on that front, with Trump appreciating Modi, saying there's nothing wrong, things will get there, and Modi appreciating the global strategic partnership. A lot of messaging happening, and New Delhi's silence over the last couple of weeks, a lot of patience that New Delhi has shown, a lot of determination as well in foreign policy when it comes to the bullying tactics, really has gone down well. India's foreign policy really comes out in a very positive fashion on this entire issue. So I believe that in the next few days, we may not see Vishnu.
There was a question which was asked to the External Affairs spokesperson on a comment which had been made by one of the American leaders. There are so many comments, I forget who it was. But the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson saying, no, I'm not going to respond to that. I don't have anything to say to that. And that's been New Delhi. New Delhi is not pushing a knee-jerk response to everything America says. Dr. Tala Kartha joins us at this stage as well. Ma'am, are you optimistic about this lasting the course, or do you believe that tomorrow we're going to ask you to join us and talk about the latest collapse in India-US relations.
I think unfortunately, Vishnu, I think the latter. Because this is his way of doing business, right? Because, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is how he does business. He will go out on limb and say all sorts of things and then bring you to heel and this. So the next one, which I anticipate, is that when you start going back to Russia for some major weapon systems, which we want, because you saw Defense Minister's statement that war could last 5 years. That's what he said in the recent conference which we had. So we need defense buys, and we are getting them from Russia. Russia is offering to make it in India. When that happens, again he'll start. So I am assuming this is going to be a kind of up and down movement. But like I've always said on your show, see, there are different segments to relations with India. It's so in any international relations, with anybody, this guy is just doing in public what was being said privately earlier. These problems went on. They were always there. The trade issues we had with the Biden administration. This guy goes ballistic, that's all. And he annoys everybody. But so and to be honest, I don't think our Prime Minister should go and meet him right now. This is not a good time. That's just my personal view.
Absolutely agree with Dr. Tara Karta because, it's like blow hot, blow cold. Look at the kind of statement that Donald Trump, the US president, made on Truth Social, where he says that we've lost India and Russia to, China, etc. And this was, a response to a media question saying, well, no, they're friends. We haven't lost them just yet. And Dr. Karta, the price of the pudding is really in the eating. And for India, this means these sanctions that have been put on the Indian economy, and this is something that, all said and done, is very damaging for us. So if that is something we can find ourselves out of, that is what we have to focus on, and that's what's important, not these comments here and there, and which could very well reverse by the evening.
That is true. I won't.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt.
Sentiment given by Donald Trump. He said Prime Minister Modi is a friend. There seems to be positive about the relationship. Your comments, Dr. Jaishankar?
Well, I think Prime Minister Modi obviously attaches enormous importance to our partnership with the United States. And where President Trump is concerned, he's always had a very good personal equation with President Trump. But the point is, look, we are engaged, we remain engaged with the United States, and at this time, I can't say more than that, but that's really what I would say.
Thank you.
The first reaction there coming in from Dr. Jaishankar, and very cautious, talking about the friendship that the two countries have had, and going forward, again, Vishnu, what would you read into that? A very cautious approach to these developments. Of course, we're being very gung-ho about it, but yes, go ahead, Vishnu.
This is India's most experienced diplomat.
Yes.
He's probably gained where this is headed in his own mind. He understands the possibilities over there, and therefore he has stated the obvious. The Prime Minister values India's relationship with America. India values our relationship with America. That's a given. That's this thing. But beyond that, he was not willing to get ahead of himself.
That's right.
Now, that comes from decades of experience and in having really worked through this entire relationship. Gargi?
Right. He says we remained engaged with the US at this time. He doesn't want to say more than that. And I think getting ahead of themselves is something that perhaps we in the media should also, take note of. We'll return to this, discussion, all these developments that's taking place for the moment. And I request our guests to stay on. Dr. Karta, do stay on. We'll slip into a short break. Welcome back. The big story we're tracking right now, the comments made by US President Donald Trump on relations with India, where he says Prime Minister Modi will always be a great friend, and the Prime Minister there reacting to this as well, appreciating those comments. So we've had the first reaction coming in from the External Affairs Minister on these comments. Let's listen in to what he said.
Well, I think Prime Minister Modi obviously attaches enormous importance to our partnership with the United States. And where President Trump is concerned, he's always had a very good personal equation with President Trump. But the point is, look, we are engaged, we remain engaged with the United States. And at this time, I can't say more than that. But that's really what I would say. Thanks.
All right, so that was the first very cautious response from Dr. Jaishankar coming to these, developments. With the U.S. president talking about how India has not lost. He doesn't think India has lost. That the U.S. has lost India. Something that he himself had claimed that they've lost Russia and India to the deepest, darkest China. However, when asked about this at a press conference, he says, "No, I don't think so." He spoke about how Prime Minister Modi remains a good friend, and the Prime Minister there reciprocating those sentiments in a post on X. Let's go across to our guests now to talk more about this. We're also joined by Ravi Karkara, founder Investors Forum NYC, and Jayant Krishna, Senior Fellow, US-India Policy Studies, Center for Strategic and International Studies. And with us, Dr. Tara Karta remains. Dr. Tara Karta, I'd like to go to you first. Your comments on, what we just saw, Dr. Jaishankar's reaction to these latest developments.
He's been dealing with this country for now. I've lost count of the number of years he's been dealing with it. Right, so he knows this situation. But, what can you say? At one level, Trump has never personally said anything against Prime Minister Modi. He's never said, he's a good friend, He's continued saying that. On the other hand, you have someone like Howard Lutnick saying, "Oh, India will come to the table saying we're sorry."
Yes.
What's wrong with you? Are you like a sixth grade student that we should go and say we're sorry? And so that atmosphere around Trump of "Hail Trump," he's the deal maker, and that is one aspect. The other aspect is Trump himself has a good. He's no fool. He's basically a businessman, and this is how he does business. The trouble is now he's running a country. But I like I've always said on your channel, there are aspects to the Indo-US relations which are going on smoothly. There's so many areas where, there are, I think, last count, there were about 11 working groups. Space, we've got those things are going on. So this is one segment. And I would expect that this segment will keep on troubling us in the times to come. But hopefully we can make that distinction and go ahead with the rest, particularly on Quad and on some other initiatives which we have, like joint exercises. I think that has come on again. The Alaska exercises, after a sort of a thought whether they should do it or not, that is back. So I think we're okay. We're good.
All right. Yes, but it gets difficult, for Indian diplomats really to, gauge what is happening. What are the reasons for all these comments? Of course, a lot has been said that behind the scenes, the reason is this Nobel Peace Prize and, what the US president really wants to, posture himself as. But Jayant Krishna, your comments on all these developments, how should we read what Donald Trump has said? And, as Dr. Tara Karta said, by the evening, he could very well say something very different.
Yeah, so Gargi, I am not for any premature celebration as to what he has said, because, his behavior depends on which side of the bed he gets up from. Every day he changes his views and changes the views through the day also. And but, that was a lighter comment. But I hope, it reflects some kind of a thaw in the relationship. And at the end of the day, US also understands that they want an access to Indian market, which is the most populous country in the world with an increasing purchasing power. India has been the front runner in terms of an alternate supply chain destination other than China. We all know how strong the Indian diaspora is in the US. And of course, India is best placed to address the extreme Chinese economic aggression that it has been showing in the last few years, So I think, I hope it's a realization to that effect. And I hope he has been advised by right people. What he has been saying, India is a tariff king. I hope he understands that the weighted average tariff for all goods that US exports to India, the weighted average tariff is just about 4.6%. And almost half the products enjoy a tariff of less than 5%. So I think we are not the tariff king if you leave aside, products like farm products, agro products, dairy products, and so on and so forth, because there India has to protect the interest of its farmers. I hope his advisors have also told him that it is pointless, penalizing India with a 50% levy and China with a 30% levy when China imports far more crude oil from Russia than India does. So I hope, generally in US also, if you look at
if the crude oil is really the reason, because I think it's already come out in several points, and this has been said that what's driving Trump and this anger with India is firstly to deny his role in bringing peace between India and Pakistan. Also, the fact that he's angling for that peace prize. He wanted the Prime Minister to come to Washington and Asim Munir to be there and get that sort of a photo op. So there are all kinds of things, which is why I think it's so confounding for us. What is happening? Why these remarks coming in from the Trump administration? But let me go across quickly to my colleague Aarti on the big takeaways of this development.
We've seen that Trump has made quite a U-turn in his statement. He's tried to do some damage control. And let's take a look at the big takeaways of what we understand out of this warm exchange between the Prime Minister and Trump. Firstly, Trump now realizes that bullying doesn't work with India. He now realizes that the tariffs and the statements, the racism and the attacks that were meted out against India does not work. They will have to be handled diplomatically. Now, if we take a look at the other takeaway coming in, Trump realizes that his actions had eroded trust. Now, this is again something that's important because of the statements that had come in from the aides as well as Trump. It was causing a lot of tension between India and US, and that, of course, it seems Trump has now realized that it was starting to erode trust between both nations. Now, India and US back channels actively pursued the off-ramp. Now, this also means that there has been perhaps back channel talks between India and the US, after which Trump has come out and made a statement, extended the olive branch, and the Prime Minister as well doing the same, after responding and saying that the ties between India and US indeed are positive. If we take a look at the other takeaways, it's that Indian restraint and composure has worked. Now, of course, India has exercised restraint when it comes to responding to the United States. There were several statements that were made targeting India, and statements that said, quote-unquote, Modi war over the Ukraine war, and saying that India should not be importing Russian oil, racist statements made against Brahmins in India, and that sort of statement. But India has not responded to any of that, again maintaining their composure, and that, it seems, has worked. Again, the other takeaway is that Trump has now realized that aggression didn't serve America. Now, the aggressive stance that Trump once took, we saw this behavior not just with Trump, but also with his aides, with Besant as well, where he made a statement and then went back on it and said, no, we are looking for friendlier ties with India, and that we will work past the differences. And again, that's sort of a similar statement to what Trump has made. Now, Trump isolated politically and economically. Now, he understands that hating on India, China and Russia together when they are joining hands would not perhaps be the intelligent thing to do at this moment, where he did get agitated after the SCO meeting when Xi Jinping, Prime Minister Modi and Putin had met and had showed that they were united. But it seems he's recalibrated that and realized that he would then be isolated both politically and economically.
All right, Aarti, thanks so much for joining us with all those, points. We'll slip into a short break for the moment and return with more reactions on what this now means for India-US ties. Welcome back. We're talking about India-US relations and the recent developments of Prime Minister Modi responding to comments by US President Donald Trump, where he said we'll always be friends, and Prime Minister Modi saying we fully reciprocate his sentiments. But this comes at a time that India is facing those 50% tariffs. Let's go across to Ravi Karkara for more on that. Ravi, how do you see these developments? And really, while Donald Trump may say one thing now and something else later, what really matters is that trade deal and how soon and how long these 50% tariffs will remain on India.
Absolutely. It's for me, the word is cautious optimism. I have to be honest, it's great to see a Trump's tweet or a post, but I'm more excited with the way Honorable Prime Minister Modi has responded. And I've been saying in most of my interviews since this started after April 22nd, I said the business community is very, very sharp and aligned and focused to make sure India-US stay on track. And of course, we need to make a distinction between the noise and the signal. So the signal to the business community is very important. I really feel the meeting with CEOs has a very important a role in this, because I think there must have been a lot of work happening behind scenes to say very clearly that if we are going to do what we're doing, we're going to get into a recession. It'll have a very strong implication, which will be long-term, not short-term. And I think it's really important to really see this through, because we see him going back and forth. So yes, we can be euphoric, celebrate, but I think for me, Modi ji's acknowledgement and the wordings are much more important. And I think we really need to see, and I remember the question I asked Honorable Jaishankar ji when he was here in New York at the Newsweek conference, and I said, what happened to the FTA? And this was end June, and he replied, he said, Ravi, it's no longer an FTA, it's a BTA. And I remember turning to another colleague right next to me, and I said, look, it's a BTA. That means something's up. And we saw what happened since end of June. Because many of us have worked on this, right? So I would say cautious optimism right now.
All right, cautious optimism, and clearly something the corporates are watching very closely, because end of the day, it is the trade deal that really matters and the removal of these sanctions. Thank you so much, Ravi, for joining us. We'll slip into a short break and continue bringing you all the latest developments. Do stay with us.